accounts of the restaurant culture of the time. 70 great restaurants here in Kaifeng. The waiters rushing from table to table, taking the orders, rushing back from the hatch with 3 dishes of food down one arm and 20 bowls down the other, never making the mistakes as one contemporary. And that restaurant culture brings you etiquette, how to behave at table, how to be considerate to your fellow diners, not to rush, not to chew loudly, to be careful when you're all eating from the same bowl. And that in turn, of course, brings you a kind of foodie culture. They've got cookbooks back in the Song Dynasty. One of them has been reprinted ever since the last time in 2004. Pure recipes from the Mountain House Cookbook. Oranges stuffed with crab meat, bean curd, steamed with hibiscus flowers. And each one of these recipes has got delightful notes by the author telling you where he first picked it up. Take this one. Plum blossom noodle cake soup.
I picked up this recipe from an old scholar in the Zima Mountains, in a beautiful snowy night. And whenever I taste it, exquisite moment comes flooding back to me.
In a restaurant in Old Kaifeng, we asked the chef to make one of these 11th century recipes adapted for the vegetarian.
雪梨、莲子、银耳这些东西都是清热才有的。
There's a type of mushroom, pear, and lotus seed.
Lotus seed.
So you mix mushrooms and fruit. That's very interesting.
Because they have this function of like the deflammation.
Inflammation.
Wow. It's delicious.
味道很好，谢谢。
这是我们应该做的。
Sense pleasure.
Thank you. Right.
Inflammation 是什么？
That's all right.
阿弟，你一直拍那个品牌的。
The Mountain House Cookbook was one of thousands of books you could buy in Kaifeng. Publishing boomed. From vast imperial encyclopedias to poetry, history and ritual, and self-help manuals for the literate man and woman in the street. The Chinese had invented woodblock printing back in the Tang, one of many great inventions with which they led the world. And now in the Song, they devised movable type too, although that never took off in the same way.
The first mention of this is slightly after 1040, a person called Bishan using clay to print with movable types on it. So each one of us is a Chinese character, and therefore part of the page in frame.
But it wasn't taken up.
No.
Chinese made this invention, which has proved so useful to the rest of the world, but they didn't find it useful. Why?
It has to do with the Chinese characters, because there are so many of them, and say if you look at this page, almost every character is a different one. Economically, it wasn't viable, it wasn't efficient, especially compared to just using a single woodblock print.
Too cumbersome for such a vast range of characters.
Yes.
And you can see exactly why when East met West in the 20th century with the typewriter.
Each individual metal type is a Chinese character. You'd have to choose the right one by navigating this.
And how many characters have they got for this machine then?
Probably about 3,000.
How many do you need to negotiate, say, a newspaper in modern China then?
About 3,000 or 4,000 for the average.
So, strangely enough, although this seems very cumbersome to be carving woodblocks, it's actually much more efficient. Especially if a book stays in print for centuries, as they do in China. So tell us about the readership in the Song then. Does reading percolate down into ordinary people?
Well, of course, there are the more sort of elite classes who can read and who are expected to read. But definitely literacy is spreading in the Song. Even if they weren't able to read themselves, they would be easily able to find someone who can do that for them.
One of the great things about the Song dynasty is the attention to we would call, I suppose, civic values. They even publish books on old age. This, you're not going to believe this, but this is a book about, well, it's called How to Help Old People Live Better, Longer and More Fulfilling Lives. And it was written in 1085. And it's gone through editions in every dynasty of China ever since.
Yes.
And this is the latest 2013 printing. How about that? Now, to care for old people, you have to look at the nature of their whole life. Everybody has things that they really like, things that make them glad. Books and paintings, music. There are millions of things that people like. If a person frequently seeks out the things that they've loved all their life and focuses on their essence and has these things around them, it will give them endless joy and pleasure, and their days will be joyful. And today's citizens still follow the Song's self-help message.
喜乐有个喜乐的心，就是锻炼身体，开心。 就是心胸宽阔，不要自放，要对别人宽厚，对自己要严厉。还有老有所为，因为我们因为有时候有老年人有那个养老金，有这个保障。
Yeah. So dancing is very good. Yeah. So in its ideas about the good life, the Song went beyond any earlier civilization, even the ancient Greeks. And in science, the list of their inventions is incredible. From gunpowder and blast furnaces, to the magnetic compass, and evolution theory. The most famous scientist came from a village down in Fujian on the south coast. Song, there he is, one of the great polymaths of the Song dynasty, and they don't come much more poly than him. He was an engineer, astronomer, scholar, and poet, but he also wrote treatises on mineralogy and zoology and pharmacology. It's real left brain, right brain stuff, isn't it? But their education enabled them to be both artistic and scientific.
拍什么嘞？哎呦，这样远拍来这么贵，
Reminds you of some of the great figures of the Renaissance in Europe. I suppose you could say that he's the Chinese
哎呦，下雨不知道有没有开，我一定。
correctly, Leonardo is the Western
吃
Song.
罗家要不要？要。
Okay.
罗家很好吃。
This is Su Song's pet project, an astronomical clock.
没有哦，没有赚哦，亏1块钱。